The forest does not care how old you are. It does not adjust its cold for the ache in your knees, or soften its silences for the ones who have no one left to fill them. In the deep wilderness of the northern woodlands, where the pines stand so dense they hold the darkness even at noon, and the frost arrives in September and stays until it is ready to leave, survival is not a choice you make once. It is a choice you make every single morning before your feet touch the cold floor. Had made that choice every morning for 80 years. She was a small woman, the kind of small that comes not from fragility but from having been compressed by decades of hard weather and harder living into something unbreakable. Her hands were rough and sure. Her eyes were pale, the of ice over deep water, and they missed nothing. She had lived in this cabin at the edge of the forest for 31 years, first with her husband, Thomas, and then for the last 9 years without him. The cabin was 14 feet by 12, one oil lantern, one iron pot that had been her mother's before hers. The stack of firewood on the back porch told the honest truth of her life. When it was high, she was safe. When it ran low, she had to go back into the forest. On the morning of the first deep freeze of the season, the stack was low. She pulled on her coat, lifted her axe from the wall hook, and went into the trees. She had been cutting for nearly an hour when she heard it. Not a howl, not a growl. Something quieter and more frightening than either, the low, halting sound of a large animal breathing too hard in the cold. The sound of something that had stopped trying to move. She found him 20 feet off the trail, half hidden beneath the low spread of a fallen spruce. A wolf, a large one, broad through the shoulder and white, with a coat built for exactly the kind of cold that was pressing down on both of them right now. He was lying on his side in the snow. His left rear leg was caught, not in a trap. She saw as she came closer, but bent at a wrong angle, the kind of wrong that meant he had fallen hard and fast, perhaps from the ridge above. A long gash ran across his left flank, dark and matted with ice and dried blood. His eyes were open. They found her immediately. She stopped 6 feet away and looked at him, and he looked at her. He was too exhausted to growl, too hurt to run. He simply watched her approach with the calm, clear gaze of a creature that has accepted what is coming and has not yet decided whether to be afraid of it. Set down her axe. She was 80 years old, alone in the forest, 300 from her cabin, and there was a wounded wolf lying in the snow looking at her with pale gold eyes that held no malice, only exhaustion, and the small, fragile thing that exhaustion sometimes carries inside it. She had seen that look before, in the mirror some mornings. She did not think about it for long. She took off her outer coat, laid it over him, and went back to the cabin for the sled. It took her 4 trips and most of the afternoon. She built a splint from birch branches and cut leather strapping, the same way her father had taught her to do for injured livestock when she was a girl. She cleaned the wound with boiled water and bound it with strips of wool she cut from the spare blanket. Her hands worked steadily, with the particular calm that comes not from the absence of fear, but from long practice with things that must be done regardless. The wolf did not bite her. He watched her hands the entire time. Occasionally, when the pain was sharp, his lips would pull back and he would make a low sound, not a threat exactly, but a warning. And she would slow her hands, speak quietly, and continue. She said, I know, stay still. She had said those exact words before, to Thomas near the end, to the forest sometimes when it pressed too close. She moved him into the covered lean-to attached to the cabin wall, sheltered from the wind, insulated with hay, and brought him broth that night. He did not eat at first. By the 3rd day, he did. By the end of the 1st week, he was watching the door when she went out and watching it still when she came back. By the 2nd week, he was following her. Not closely, not immediately. The way a shadow follows at the edge of your vision, close enough to be there, far enough to preserve the dignity of the thing. She called him Frost. He learned her rhythms the way wild things learn what they need to survive, completely, precisely, without sentiment. He learned that she went to the river every Tuesday and Friday with the hand-cast net her son had made before he moved away. He would wade in ahead of her, moving along the bank, driving the fish shallow with a patience that seemed almost deliberate. The catch doubled. She stopped going hungry on February nights. He learned the sound of the wood running low, the particular hollow resonance when she struck the side of the porch stack, and would appear at the tree line, standing still, watching, as though making the offer with his presence alone. She would follow him into the forest and he would move ahead, threading between trees, and she began to understand that he was choosing the path most sheltered from the wind, the one with the least ice underfoot. She was 80 years old, and she had stopped falling. The loneliness was harder to name. It had been her companion for 9 years, a weight so constant she had stopped noticing it the way you stop noticing the cold after long enough. But on the evening she sat by the stove and felt Frost's weight settle against her legs on the floor beside her chair, unhurried, without announcement, simply there. She understood that the weight had shifted. She sat with her hand on his back and did not speak. She did not need to. It was late March when the bear came out of winter lean and wrong, and looking for the fastest answer to its hunger. Had walked farther than usual that morning. The sky had been clear, and her legs felt strong, and she had let herself follow that feeling the way she rarely did anymore. She was perhaps from the cabin when she heard the crash of something heavy through the brush to her left, and turned, and had exactly 1 second to understand what she was seeing before it was already moving. The bear hit her shoulder before Frost hit the bear. She went down into the snow and felt the cold against her face and heard more than saw the collision behind her. A sound she had no words for, weight and force and something ferocious and pure. She turned over and found the snow and the trees and the shape of Frost in the middle of all of it, fast, impossibly fast for a leg that had been broken 4 months ago, moving around the bear the way water moves around stone, always present, never where the bear expected. The bear swung, connected. Frost went sideways into the snow. He got up. The bear charged again. He got up again. There's a point in a fight between two large animals where one of them makes a decision, not a conscious decision, not the kind made with thought, but the deeper one, the one made in the blood, about how much it costs to continue. The bear made that decision after the fourth exchange. It turned and moved back into the trees, and the sound of it faded, and the forest went still, and crawled through the snow to where Frost had finally stopped moving. He was breathing. She put her hand on his side and felt it rise and fall and kept her hand there. "I know," she said. "I know, stay still." He raised his head and looked at her once, those pale gold eyes clear and steady, and then laid it back down in the snow. She sat beside him in the cold and did not move until she was certain he was going to be fine. He was going to be fine. By the time April came, the firewood stack was the highest it had been in years. Sat on the cabin step in the thin early warmth and drank her coffee and watched Frost move along the tree line the way he always did in the morning, not patrolling exactly and not wandering. Something between the two, something that had no word in any language she knew, except perhaps home. She thought sometimes about what her life had been before him, the long, quiet evenings, the heavy Tuesday silences, the way the cabin had a particular kind of emptiness after dark that had nothing to do with the size of the room. She did not miss it. She had read once, long ago, in some book she no longer remembered, that the loneliest people are not those without company, but those whose company has stopped seeing them. Frost saw her every morning, every evening, in the forest and at the river and at the door of the cabin when she came back from anywhere at all. He saw her completely with those clear, unblinking gold eyes, and asked for nothing in return that she was not already willing to give. At 80 years old, in a forest that does not care how old you are, had found the truest thing she knew, that love does not always arrive in the shape you expected, that it sometimes arrives with 4 legs and a broken past, and a patience that outlasts every winter. She set down her coffee. She whistled once, low and short, the way she always called him. He came out of the trees immediately. He always did.